David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sir, as Attorney-General, you have to stand up every now and then and give these sorts of speeches in Parliament when you know deep down in your heart that there is something deeply wrong here. Sir, that sounded a lot like a lawyer defending somebody he knew was guilty, and was going down, and he had to give him the best send-off that he could. And that's what it was, sir. It was a send-off. Sir, the risk here is about New Zealand's reputation. That's what it is. We have a reputation for transparency, for honesty, for non-corruption, and Sir, Mr McCulley has sullied that reputation. It's one of the reasons why our rankings in Transparency International has gone from number 1 to number 4. It's because Mr McCulley has used this backroom, creative accounting, creative solution, as the Prime Minister calls it, but it's more about corruption in the minds of New Zealanders when they hear this. This is a backroom deal, sir. It's one of Mr McCulley's loose, hip pocket, avoid scrutiny at all costs type of remedies for a problem which actually, sir, doesn't exist. Let's start with one major fallacy that has been brought up not only by Mr McCulley but by the Attorney-General today, that somehow they inherited this problem. They didn't inherit this problem, sir. We banned live sheep exports in 2004 when 5,000 sheep died. There was no public appetite whatsoever for live sheep exports around the world and from New Zealand. Sir, that is the reality. And the New Zealand government, that government in 2009 reaffirmed that there was going to be no live sheep exports and did it a second time. 2 times they reaffirmed that, and Mr Key said himself there was no appetite in the New Zealand public for the resumption of live sheep exports. Sir, that is fact. So don't put it on this side of the House, sir. They agreed with it and they know that the public is not behind them on it. So let's just get that right out of the way from the very beginning, sir. Sir, the Attorney-General talked about this purple prose. He did mention the word transparency. Well, let's read what the Auditor-General said about transparency. The lack of transparency, both at the time of the decision and subsequently, has led to the concerns from the New Zealand public about the nature of the payments made. To date, explanations from ministers or officials have not resolved these public concerns. Sir, the people do not believe the government. And let's go back and remind ourselves what has actually happened here. What actually happened? $6 million was paid to the Al Khalaf Group to set up an agricultural hub in the middle of the Saudi desert. The middle of the Saudi desert. It was a disgrace, sir. Rather than highlighting New Zealand's agriculture, it was a new low. $4 million was paid directly to the Al Khalaf Group. And then, sir, we put 900 pregnant ewes on a Singapore Airlines flight and flew them, sir, to the hub, where 75% of those lambs that were born died. My God, if New Zealand wanted to advertise itself as an agricultural powerhouse, you couldn't do any worse to its reputation, sir, than that. That was Mr McCulley's big grand plan. And why? Let's ask the reason. Why did we do that? Well, the Attorney-General just explained it was because we were going to be threatened with a suit of $30 million. Just accept that we have absolutely no evidence that was going to happen. Absolutely no evidence. In fact, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has yet to come up with any sort of evidence that shows that was about to happen. The Al Khalaf Group, let's ask them. They said no, they were never intending to sue. They were never going to sue. The Treasury was not informed about what this payment was and what it was for and why it was being handled. Sir, there is absolutely no grounds that we were going to be sued, and even then it was $30 million. And yet we, New Zealand, our taxpayers, our hard-earned tax money was handed over to Mr. Calaf in that ridiculous way. In that ridiculous way, sir. So that's the first reason. That's the first reason why we paid over $11.5 million of taxpayers' money to a shonky backroom deal that Mr. McCulley has come up with. The second reason was we were about to get a free trade agreement, which of course hasn't happened. We have not yet got a free trade agreement. There's lots of purple prose, sir, about how it's imminent and how it's coming. We don't know anything about the fact of whether Mr. Al Calaf was responsible for the progress we are told that is going for, or whether that progress might have happened in any case. Sir, this is about giving, if we are to believe Mr. McCulley, this is about Mr. McCulley paying a Saudi businessman in order that a large sum of money in order that Saudi businessman can then put pressure on the Saudi government to enable us to have a free trade agreement. So what does that sound like to you? What does it sound like to people in New Zealand? That's the sort of thing that goes on in other countries, but I didn't think it would go on here in New Zealand. That, sir, I don't care what the Auditor-General says, sir, that to me sounds like her definition of a bribe that she has laid out in the table in this report. That's what it sounds like to me, sir. And in addition to that, let's go through the cabinet paper that Mr. McCulley's office, as opposed to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, put together in their back room. All of these things were not answers in the cabinet paper, yet we agreed to hand over the money. They didn't identify how the 10 million figure was arrived at. Why not 20 million? Why not 5 million? Why not 3 million? Who knows? It was just a number that Mr. McCulley dreamt up. Signalled that the risk of a claim against the government was based on 20 to 30 million, but we don't know if it was going to be 20, 30 million, 100 million, 2 million, or, as I've just said, unlikely to ever have happened. Did not include any analysis about whether there were any other potential obstacles about getting a free trade agreement. Maybe there were other things. It actually happened to go down the tube, sir, at around the same time as the financial crisis. And we know that was a factor too, sir. Identified New Zealand exports could double with the free trade agreement, but without any analysis about why it might or how it could double. Based on these shortcomings, she said, I am concerned at the lack of robust analysis and the quality of information that was provided to Cabinet on this matter. Mr. McCulley had this creative solution, but had absolutely nothing behind it. It was a shambolic shambles of a document. You only have to read it to think, I don't know how that got through from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I expected better from their lawyers and their people. Sir, this didn't even go through them. This came from Murray McCulley's office, straight into Cabinet without going through the pre-Cabinet committee meetings. Sir, this is a disgrace. It puts New Zealand's reputation at a low ebb. It has circulated widely that somehow New Zealand, rather than being a transparent, open country that would never resort to payments to business people in order to get favours, has done exactly that. Sir, I think it's a real shame. And if you want to pick the eyes out of this and say that nobody was corrupt and nobody paid bribes, and nobody benefited individually, except for obviously the Al Calaf group, and Murray McCulley didn't pocket any money, I didn't expect that it would find that, sir. But, sir, what it has shown, that this was a shambles. It was an utter shambles, and the government, actually, it should be ashamed of itself that it has got this far, sir. It's brought great discredit on New Zealand's reputation. Thank you.
David Seymour.